Tethered to Drama is part of Karina Bartow's Undefeated Detective series, which follows deaf detective Minka Avery. Minka's always striving to rise above her deafness, as well as her family's antics, to crack the case. Undercover Baby Moon is the series' newest installment, out fall 2024. For further information on Karina and her books, visit karinabartaw.com. The link is in the show notes. Welcome to Mysteries to Die For. I am TG Wolff, and I'm here with Jack, my piano player and producer. This is a podcast where we combine storytelling with original music to put you in the heart of the mystery. All of our stories are structured to challenge you to beat the detective to the solution. These are arrangements, which means instead of word-for-word readings, you get a performance that's meant to be heard. Jack and I perform these live, front to back, no breaks, no fakes, no retakes. Season 7 is Games People Play. Now, games are about competition conducted according to rules, with participants working toward a goal. Games, it turns out, are a part of every culture and one of the oldest forms of social interaction and engagement. Games can be fun, challenging, and exhilarating. They can also be intense, cutthroat, and lethal. This season, our authors have fashioned deadly games and unscrupulous villains to test your detection skills. This is episode 17. Tetherball is the featured game, and this is Tethered to Drama by Karina Bartaw. Out with the old.
Wait, I was going to say
what were you going to say?
What instrument should I play this time?
I thought you already decided on an instrument. I didn't know this was up for discussion.
Well, I feel the need to talk before we start the episode.
Oh, okay.
Because I need to introduce myself to all our new listeners.
Okay, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. All right, now that we were introduced, let's see.
A lot of this happens at a middle school, if that helps.
Oh, that's weird. What do middle schoolers do? They play the recorder.
Oh, God, please don't pick the recorder. Please don't pick the recorder. That used to make our dogs howl. That sounds French. It sounds like we should be.
Well, I play it in a major key, but yes, it does sound French. And we're doing the tenor sax, but I have to transpose it up. I had my whole keyboard shifted down really deep, and you couldn't hear any of the low notes because they're so deep. So, this is a tenor saxophone sound effect.
Okay.
Let's get into it.
Out with the old with a tenor sax. Minka Avery stood with her husband Wes outside Glen Ridge Middle School in Orlando, Florida, where he had attended 6th through 8th grade. In a few years, their daughter Kayla would be following in his footsteps, but in a new building, for which ground was being broken that afternoon. Wes had fond memories of the school, as did Cale, his brother and Minka's partner, with the Orlando PD. Since the two detectives were going to the event anyhow, their commanding officer enlisted them to maintain order, if needed, instead of assigning two patrolmen. None of them anticipated that the glorified photo op would turn too rowdy, so Minka just appreciated getting paid on top of being a supportive wife. Despite the decades that had passed since his enrollment, quite a few of Wes's former teachers still worked there, who were delighted to learn that he'd become a teacher. Some of his old classmates came for the occasion too. Thus he socialized before, during, and after the proceedings, once again proving Wes to have the long life popularity. Meanwhile, her brother-in-law visited with just a handful of acquaintances, but not nearly as many as her husband. The observation prompted her to tease Cale. "He really has overshadowed you, hasn't he?" Cale smirked. "I don't crave attention like he does. I'm secure enough without it." Minka giggled over his macho act. Once the ceremony ended, refreshments awaited the attendees. So Cale, Minka, and Kayla ventured over to the snack table while Wes continued to fraternize. Minka gravitated toward the crackers on the cheese platter, They'd been dominating her diet as she still battled morning sickness in her 9th week of pregnancy. "Crackers again, Mom?" Kayla chided. Wanting to wait to announce their new addition until she'd made it through her first trimester, Minka shrugged. "I haven't had Triscuits in a long time." To her relief, another treat distracted her perceptive 7-year-old's attention. "What are these?" Minka looked at the snack-sized pretzels, which had a Rolo candy nested between a pecan and the twists. "Aunt Sue makes those," she said. "She calls them turtle pretzels." Kayla snatched up 3. Minka took a couple, unable to resist her childhood favorite. She could only hope the baby growing inside her wouldn't protest it. As she chewed, Wes neared her, accompanied by a schoolmate, she assumed. "Minka, this is William Barkley, my old lab partner." Minka shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." The instant he picked up on the speech impediment caused by her deafness, his expression turned sour. He quickly shifted back to Wes. "So you and Coretta never could make it work, huh?" Minka recognized the name as Wes's most serious girlfriend in high school, but she couldn't believe this guy would mention her after all these years. Wes offered her a timid grin, shrugging as he replied to William, "Nah, I haven't heard from her since college." William didn't take the hint to drop the subject. According to the grapevine, she made a run at singing career in Nashville. I'm surprised she didn't hit the big time with that incredible voice of hers. Whether or not he was attempting to make Minka self-conscious, he was succeeding. She debated trying to discreetly switch off the transmitter on her cochlear implant. Adept at handling awkward situations, Wes steered the exchange in a new direction. "Speaking of careers, William went into teaching too, Minka. He teaches 6th grade English right here." Minka wondered if he'd had his students read Pride and Prejudice, given that he had the prejudice part pat down. "By the way," Wes continued, "did your playwriting career ever take off?" "Not really," William said. "I tried to get Sheila Nevins, our drama director, to consider having the kids perform one for our spring production, but she wouldn't budge on keeping it mainstream." "Mrs. Nevins works here?" Wes inquired. "She was a lot of fun, and we've kept in touch over the years. I took her class in high school. Did she switch grade levels?" "No," William explained. "She just comes over a few times a week. The high school drama department had been losing support, so she convinced the administration to let her start including younger students. The 8th graders even get to participate in the high school play. Maybe my production will finally get a chance after she retires." "Well, if Broadway doesn't call you first, you'll have our daughter in 5 years," Wes told him. "And after that, you'll have our nephew Tyson, Cale's son," Minka interrupted him, uneager for the stranger to hear the news before Kayla did. "He's a chatterbox, just like his Uncle Wes." To her relief, Kayla strolled over and asked to go to the playground in Blue Jacket Park, behind the school. Most of the attendees cleared out. Minka consulted with Kale, who agreed to take care of the event alone, freeing her up to escort her daughter. Since they didn't frequent this particular park, the different equipment excited Kayla. She skipped right up to the jungle gym that was shaped like a sphere. Minka lingered a little distance behind, meandering toward the old tetherball post. Surrounded by caution tape, it had a notice stating that it was off limits due to safety concerns. Nonetheless, a ball still hung from it, which she considered unintelligent if the powers that really wanted to enforce the ban. Then again, nobody but her typically played it back in her elementary school days. Because of the way William treated her, the game beckoned to her. It had been a solace during her lonely childhood recess, acting as a playmate when the other kids ignored her. She chuckled inside, remember how she unleashed some pent-up aggression as she batted the ball away. She approached her old friend, defying the order to stay away. She lifted the ball from its post, but unsurprisingly, it was deflated. Before she let it go, she spotted a slit cut into the rubber. She inserted her finger and found a piece of paper. She plucked it out and read it. "Snitches never win." The odd message and its equally unusual location perplexed her. She debated whether to put it back or discard it. taking a few steps down the hill beside her toward a trash can. The sight of a woman's shoes on the other side of a nearby tree redirected her trek. She circled the trunk and beheld a woman lying on the ground. Minka knelt down, reaching for her wrist to check her pulse. Not detecting one, she gazed at the woman's lanyard around her neck, which carried her name badge. It identified her as Sheila Nevins, Wes's drama teacher. A Will to Kill. Minka had sent a text message to Cale and Wes, comprising of 3 SOS emojis. Given they both knew her location, she figured typing more would only be a waste of time. After that, she placed a call to her precinct. As she awaited the arrival of Cale, Wes, and the medical examiner, she had to figure out how to handle this without alarming Kayla and the other children playing at the park. Before she could formulate a plan, her daughter peeked over the fence. "Are you sick again, Mom?" Faced with the possibility of revealing her pregnancy or the dead body beside her, she chose the one that wasn't gruesome, rubbing her stomach. "Yeah, sweetie, I just can't kick this bellyache." Kayla grinned. "Remember when Aunt Autumn was always sick when she had Tyson in her?" Wes and Cale cut off the leading remark by dashing up the sidewalk. Wes cried, "What's wrong? Is it the—" Kayla beat her mom to responding, "Yes, the baby is making Mom throw up again." The parents shook their heads as Minka cooked up how to use the revelation to her advantage. "Wes, could you play with Kayla while Cale and I clean up?" "Why me?" Cale protested. "The baby's not mine." Wes patted him on the back and ushered Kayla away. In reply to her partner, Minka told him in sign language, "I found a dead body." She led him to the deceased teacher, all the while debating if she should warn him about her identity. In the few months since their promotion to the homicide department, they hadn't run across a victim they knew. They reached the body before she decided how to phrase a comment. Cale put his hand over his mouth in shock. "Oh, my." "I'm sorry," Minka said, putting a supportive arm around his shoulder. "Thanks," he said, "but I never took her class, and I only spoke to her in passing. Still, this is tragic." Minka paused out of respect and then stepped into her official role. "The lacerations on her neck tell me she was strangled. Looks like the weapon was an inch or 2 thick, wouldn't you say?" Cale nodded. "Maybe a thick rope or a belt?" She scouted out other clues around the victim, eyeballing a lawn marker behind Sheila's right shoulder. It matched the tiny flags at the other end of the property, where the city laid out a plot for an upcoming project. Without gloves, Minka resisted the impulse to touch it, but she didn't need to, spotting what set this one apart. The marker stick had a twist tie attached to it, and a corner of a piece of paper remained affixed to it. Minka took out the confounding note she stuffed into her pocket after she found the body, and, surely enough, it had a torn corner that lined up to the edge exactly. "Look at this," she told Cale. "I discovered this note stuck inside the tether ball. It appears to have been attached to the flag. Maybe she noticed it and tore the note off when she was extracting it." Cale read the message Minka showed him. Then he stated, "Wonder what she could have snitched that drove somebody to kill her." Minka pondered her theory and voiced it. "I'm not sure about that, but William Barclay had a beef with her. She refused to showcase a play he wrote, and he seemed pretty miffed over it. He was eager for her to retire so that he could get a chance with another director. Maybe he grew too impatient." Cale's eyes narrowed in disbelief. "I've known William since I was a little kid. I can't picture him doing this." "Doing what?" Wes asked, treading through the grass. Minka rushed up to him to stop him from coming down to the body. She whispered, "Honey, something's happened." Cale joined her, and she related how she found his teacher. The news crushed his spirits, making him crouch down in sorrow. As he processed it, the medical examiner arrived, but Minka motioned for Cale to go with the ME alone while she consoled her husband. Once Wes regained his composure, he circled back to the statement he'd overheard. How does William factor into this? Minka dreaded the inevitable spat her suspicions would incite. Remember how he was grousing about her denying him the opportunity to present his play? What if he wanted retribution and shot to win over her replacement? Oh, come on, Minx, he scoffed. Just because he was a little disappointed over his dream going unfulfilled doesn't mean he killed the woman. Trust me, I know him. His wife crossed her arms. Just like you knew your other classmate who dated a mobster and almost had you killed? Wes rolled his eyes but said nothing. Minka didn't continue the speculation, needing to strategize. She had to hunt William down before he vacated the area, if he hadn't already. At the same time, she better get back to Cale and the medical examiner. To her relief, Dawson Michaels, a part-time crime analyst with OPD, wandered down the sidewalk. He'd been at the groundbreaking, both because his family's diner donated to the project and because 2 of his 7 kids attended the middle school. His son and daughter sat on a bench immersed in their phones while he approached Minka and questioned, "What's going on? I saw the notice about a murder on the dispatcher's database and couldn't believe it happened right here." Minka nodded. "I discovered her. It's Sheila Nevins, the drama teacher." Dawson's eyes grew. "Are you kidding? My daughter's in her class." Once again, Minka allowed a sober moment to elapse. Glancing at his kids, she hated to request his help, but couldn't resist. "Do you have a couple of minutes to join Cale's briefing with the ME while I follow a lead? You're even better at picking up details than I am." "Lead is a stretch, don't you think?" Wes muttered. She ignored Wes as Dawson agreed to pitch in. Before she took off, she told Wes, "You can take Kayla home whenever she's ready. We'll probably have to close the park soon anyhow. I'll hitch a ride with Cale." He murmured an acknowledgement and then asked, "You and Dawson went to the academy together, right?" She sighed, certain of his next words. Living up to her predictions, he said, "If my classmate's on the suspect list, yours better be too." She sauntered away, replying, "We may be on a child's playground, but that doesn't mean you have to act like one."
Who's Cale?
Cale and Minka are partners. They're detective partners on the Orlando PD.
Who's Kayla?
Little girl, the daughter of Minka.
Did she name her daughter after her detective partner?
Yes.
That is confusing as hell. I was thinking, why are they letting a daughter, this child, look at a dead body and that person just go, "Huh, weird, right?" She go, "What is
Okay, so
happening?"
yes, whenever I say Cale, that is a grown man who is a police detective.
Okay.
Whenever I say Kayla, that is a 7-year-old girl.
They're literally spelled the same way. Kayla just has an A at the end.
Yes.
They're spelled Cael, by the way, listeners. So it's not like the leaf, which I made fun of last time we listened to one of Karina's stories. Don't worry. I didn't let that joke pass up. I'm more responsible than that.
It's like if somebody named a child after you and they named it Jacka, Jacka.
Except it'd be like Jaeky, and it'd be Jacka.
Jacka.
Kayla.
Kayla.
Jackalope. All right.
All right, so now we got our characters straight?
Yep.
Okay, that's important. It's important in a mystery to know who you're talking about. Going off script. During the short walk to school, Minka lost some of the gusto she first had about pursuing William. She didn't have any evidence against him other than the disfavor he manifested, which could have been innocent frustration everyone has with colleagues. Besides that, could he, or anybody else, have killed Sheila and still be in attendance at the groundbreaking? Why would a murderer stick around the scene of a crime for such a ceremony? Perhaps her pregnancy hormones, coupled with her disdain over William's blatant stereotypes, were getting the best of her. Before she conceded to the frank notion, she mulled over another line of reasoning. She couldn't recall seeing William before he started to talk to Wes after the speeches, so he could have snuck into the group to net an alibi. It wouldn't have been more prudent to merely drive home by himself. He probably felt like he hit a jackpot when he encountered two detectives who could vouch for him being present. As she neared the building, she sent Cale a quick text, asking him to let her know when the ME's estimated time of death as soon as he could. She forwarded the message to Dawson in case her partner was too preoccupied to check it. She reflected on her brief touch of Sheila's wrist and didn't believe rigor mortis had set in yet, meaning she met her demise within the last 2 hours. Just before she turned toward the lawn where the festivities took place, she eyeballed William by his car in the parking lot. She hustled his way, but slowed her pace once she closed in on him, not wanting to make her look so desperate. She'd already decided she would treat the interrogation casually, considering her lack of evidence and the fact that they still hadn't made the assumed homicide public knowledge. "Hey, William, is it?" She relished in depreciating his status in Wes's life. "Have you seen my husband lately? My daughter and I would like to head home." "No, I haven't," he replied. "After our conversation, I had to round up a few things in my classroom." "Oh, okay. I guess I'll just text him again." Minka consulted her phone for a second, which showed responses from Dawson and Cale, informing her that Sheila had likely died within the hour. With that in mind, she attempted to establish if William had listened to the whole program. "I enjoyed learning all of the history of the school during Superintendent Wrigley's speech. Have you ever heard the fact about the original building being first used for storage for Cape Canaveral?" William raised his eyebrows over the phony account. "Where did he get that one? My older sister was in one of the first classes to use it when it opened up." "Huh, that's odd." She stifled a giggle. "You should have spoken up." "Well, I would have if I'd made it out there for his presentation. My kids and I took a field trip to a local author's book fair, so I was late," he claimed. Minka nodded and switched topics. "I'm sorry to hear about your coworker dismissing your talent. I understand how that feels." He shrugged, expressionless. His apathy made it harder for her to display kindness. "Do you suppose she underestimated you because you were a former student? I think people do that when they watch us grow up." William opened his car door, indicating that he didn't care to chat about it. Still, he told her, "I never joined drama, so she didn't know me very well. I don't waste time reaching for why people act the way they do." The remark made sense, given that he didn't seem concerned about cleaning up his own behavior. "Have you discussed it with her recently? Maybe she'll reconsider." "Yeah, I took it up with her this morning, in fact. She just won't give me a chance." He began to step into the car, clearly finished with Minka. He didn't escape very swiftly. His trousers slipped down a tad. As he hiked them up, she noticed his lack of a belt.
You trying to tell me that this episode is called Tetherball and the woman was not killed by a tetherball?
She was not killed by a tetherball.
By the tetherball rope, darn you very much, okay? You know what?
You actually wanted this one to be horror. You wanted the head to be the tetherball.
I was just about to say that. I wanted to come out and see like two guys in black just like wailing on some head, having it spin around and crack against the pole. I was like, this one could be so gruesome. Think about it. That tetherball could have been gruesome.
Tetherball could have been gruesome.
The pole could have been like a femur.
No, it wouldn't have been
like
long
a giraffe's
enough.
femur.
It would not.
Okay, I said it and I realized how stupid that was.
Yeah, the
all
pole is just a pole.
I was thinking maybe you could like kick it. But like think about it. A giraffe femur with like a dude's head around it. It could be like zoo tetherball. Someone died.
No, it's still not long enough.
I'm just workshopping something, guys.
It's still not long enough.
Giraffes are pretty tall.
Giraffes are pretty tall, but a femur is still a femur.
No, a giraffe's femur.
Is what?
Tall.
Not tall. By the end
It's
of this,
gotta be tall.
by this end of this, I am not going to switch on to Google right now because that will totally blow away this. But once we get to the end, I am going to Google how long a giraffe femur is, and we will decide if it can be used as a pole.
Well, we also have to look up how tall the average tetherball pole is. Okay, we have some research to do.
We have some
listeners.
research to do.
Okay, let's get back to the story.
The new detectives on the block. Minka traversed back to the park, where Kayla and Dawson remained with the medical examiner. More backup officers had come to assist with securing the scene, alerting those in the park to the ongoing investigation. Along her path, Minka encountered several parents with young children and suggested they exit the premises. She observed Kayla still enjoying the playground, but Wes had guided her farther from the scene. By the time she approached the investigators, the new ME, Sadie Gray, was almost complete with her probe and caught Minka up on her findings. Sadie agreed with Minka and Kale's assumption that the teacher was strangled with a belt or something similar. Minka refrained from interrupting her assessment to relate that William was missing the accessory. While she listened to Sadie, Minka's eyes scoured the setting better than they had when she initially beheld the body. Her sights landed on a small wireless camera perched on an unused drinking fountain, positioned in the direction of the tetherball pole. Once Sadie finished her discourse about defensive marks on Sheila's arms, Minka padded over to the camera. She knelt down to it and confirmed that the power light was lit, meaning it was on. She told the guys, "Well, we found a witness, if we could access its recordings." They shuffled over, with Dawson commenting, "That's an odd place to plant a camera." "I'll say," Cale agreed. "The fountain is out of order, and their tetherball game is off limits. What's there to watch?" "Besides a murder," Minka dryly joked, before elaborating. "Obviously, you can never have too robust a surveillance system in a park like this, but most of the ones in Orlando have cameras in the light posts." They took a synchronized gander around and saw the lamppost common across the city. After swapping some ideas, Cale opted to call the city for information about the park's security measures, while Minka and Dawson scoured the vicinity for cameras like the ones on the fountain. Minka strolled toward Wes and Kayla. Her daughter skipped up to her, sweaty from her afternoon exercise. She proclaimed, "We have to bring the baby here as soon as we can, Mom. Look at that cute toddler area." "I see. I can't wait." Minka stroked her daughter's brown wavy hair. Before Kayla could launch her own interview about the prospective sibling, Minka tried to casually employ the little girl's exceptional powers of perception. "Have either of you spotted anything shaped like a camera sitting on a ledge or other piece of equipment?" They both frowned. Kayla stated, "I thought you said the security cameras are in the lights." The parents smiled at each other, and Minka teased, "You listen to facts like that, but you can't seem to hear me to tell you to pick your toys up off the floor, Miss Avery?" Kayla shrugged. "Well, Dad can hear, and you can't. Doesn't that make me half deaf?" Minka chuckled. "You're certainly 100% cunning." West obliged her a few more minutes to play. After she ran off, he asked his wife, "Have you made any progress?" "Not really," Minka replied. "Something had to be going down at that tetherball post. A slit was cut into the ball with a menacing note inside, and a lady was killed there, and now I found a camera overlooking it. Even before it was prohibited from use, I bet it didn't see that much attention." "Well, someone evidently wanted to make sure nobody undermined the restriction," Wes speculated. "What did the note say?" "Snitches never win," Minka reported. He paused, gazing into the distance until he confessed, "I've heard somebody say that in the past." Minka's adrenaline surged. "Was it William?" "I don't think so." His response came out hesitant, but when she displayed her eagerness, his tone gained conviction. "No, it wasn't. And why do you say his name with such contempt? You sound like you have gravel in your mouth." She scowled. "I'm sorry, I don't have a mesmerizing voice like your ex-girlfriend Coretta." Wes didn't address the remark, distracted by an epiphany. I remember now. One of my teammates in football said it. I wish I could remember his name, but he wore number 60. Dawson strode up to them. I haven't spotted any cameras, have you? Minka shook her head. Nope, and neither have these two. I appreciate your help here, but I'm sure you need to get home to your kids. Yeah, I should, he agreed. My daughter Reagan had to get up early for the field trip to the book fair, so she's bushed. She'll be crushed when she learns about Mrs. Nevins. His remark sent Minka's mind spinning. Not only was Reagan in the victim's class, but she also doubtlessly was with William. She shouldn't let this insider slip through her fingers. She questioned Dawson. Would you mind if we felt Reagan out about Sheila's recent behavior? We don't have to spring the news on her, but maybe just ask how drama class is going. He let out a snicker. Hopefully you'll garner more than the everything is fine response that my wife and I get out of her. Minka accepted the challenge and roamed on the sidewalk to the secluded bench where the kids waited. Despite the commotion around them, the teens remained focused on their own concerns, and wearing headphones, neither seemed aware of the disturbance. Conveniently, Reagan was reading a mystery novel, the price tag still affixed to the cover. I guess solving crimes runs in your family just like it does mine, Minka told Dawson, while smiling at Reagan. Yep, it's in her blood, he replied. Did you get that at the book fair, honey? Uh-huh, Reagan said. Dawson grinned toward Minka, but persisted in his efforts. Did you make it back from the fair in time for drama class? I know you wanted to finish that prop you were making for the school play. Yeah, it's done, Reagan stated. The meager fact indicated that the class returned from the book fair far earlier than minutes before the groundbreaking, as William implied. Even so, the exchange didn't show much promise of revealing something without them being more direct. Having picked up a little sign language while they were at the academy, Dawson gestured, You're the detective here. Mrs. Nevins taught my husband too, Minka offered. He loved her. What did you think of her? She's awesome. The girl paused after the two-word answer. Minka and Dawson held their breath until she continued. She was kind of grumpy today, though. Tricia even noticed her crying. Do you know why? Dawson inquired. She's been talking about the school's plans to close the drama program, Reagan said. She was meeting with Superintendent Wrigley this morning, and we're afraid it didn't go very well. The Phantom of the Spring Musical. After Minka said goodbye to Dawson's family, along with Wes and Kayla, she retreated to Cale's side. The coroner already hauled away the corpse and was headed to the morgue, leaving her partner to deal with the red tape of bureaucracy and attempting to track down who managed the camera. Judging by his furrowed brow, she figured the task had been a frustrating one. Cale tucked his phone away with a sigh. Well, after talking to 2 city council members and being referred to 3 different departments, I finally made some headway. The groundskeeper who works at this and a couple of the other parks is supposed to come out and meet us. We'll have to wait a bit since he already completed his day here and moved on. While we do, we might want to consider another trip to the school and talk to Superintendent Wrigley, if he's there, Minka suggested. Dawson's daughter said he and Sheila met about budget cuts that could impact the drama program, and it really upset Sheila. We can give it a trial, Kay acquiesced. Wrigley doesn't seem like a guy who'd lose his temper and strangle a woman, though. Besides that, why would he lure her to the tetherball and leave a note like that? Why would anyone do that? Minka replied as they walked. Why was she even there? Why were you there? Cale questioned. Minka should have anticipated the trap she set for herself. Without time to get into her isolated past, she kept it simple. It brought back memories. Frankly, it was the only sport I excelled in. Cale chuckled and didn't pry further. Maybe Sheila had a habit of meeting somebody there. The possibility planted another scenario in Minka's mind. What if that slit was a sort of drop-off point for things? She could have exchanged love letters with a secret admirer of her and didn't expect such an ominous tone. He let out a dubious snort. I think you're catching a touch of teenage lust swirling in the air. On top of the pregnancy hormones, Minka admitted before she circled back to the peculiarities of the crime scene. Jokes aside, why would the note's author attach it to a lawn flag? Cale paused, then suggested maybe to ensure the intended recipient would notice it and could latch onto it easier. It might have even served as an anchor of sorts to keep it from blowing away. They trekked around the other side of the school, back to where the groundbreaking was held. Thankfully, the hands-on superintendent was assisting the organizers in picking up the chairs and remaining refreshments. Observing him, Minka couldn't picture him hurting anybody, especially right before his very public speech. Like with William, however, she reckoned it'd be an effective way to form an alibi. Superintendent Wrigley, Cal greeted him. May we speak with you, in private? Sure, Wrigley said. The three strayed away from bystanders. Minka informed him, Sir, one of your teachers, Cheryl Nevins, was killed this afternoon at the park. Wrigley gasped. No, that can't be. I just talked to her a few hours ago. Minka took advantage of his comment. We heard that. A student says Sheila seemed pretty upset after. He sighed. The treasurer has proposed some budget cuts that would have a significant impact to her apartment. I understand her grievances, to a degree. What do you mean by to a degree, Cale asked. Well, she's been liberal with the district's money, Wrigley explained. She rented expensive props and costumes from theater companies through the years and hasn't done much fundraising to help carry the load. With this new building on the agenda, we have to cut back in certain areas. Did you express those thoughts? Minka questioned. Well, yes, I did, Wrigley confessed. I showed her how much she requested for the upcoming spring production alone. I told her she needs to either do more fundraising or scale back her performances. How did you leave matters? Cale inquired. Wrigley frowned in an evaluating manner. I mean, I could tell she was miffed, but we kept things professional. We also had to discuss a high school student who's been causing trouble. Minka's brain went straight to the note accusing her of being a snitch. What kind of trouble? Well, he's not showing up to her class, as well as others, and he's at risk of losing his eligibility to play baseball. Most of the other teachers make accommodations for athletes like him, but Sheila's old school, Wrigley reported. It's a catch-22 because his father's on the board. The kid's a junior and very talented, so he has college scouts pursuing him. But they have nothing to scout if he's not on the field. Well, I'm sure an upstanding guy like you wouldn't allow politics and favoritism to muddy your ethics, right? Cale replied, to which the superintendent gave an unconvincing concurrence. Cale continued, We'll need the father and son's information. With their father being a board member, was he in attendance today? Well, yes, as a matter of fact he was, Wrigley revealed. The detective asked him for access to Sheila's classroom, and, after consulting with her principal, he granted it. While there, they collected her phone and spoke with a few of her colleagues, all of whom seemed stunned by her sudden demise. Before exiting her room, Minka noticed some papers sitting on her printer, likely having just been printed. She picked them up with her gloved hands, her eyes widening as she determined their contents. She gave Cale a peek, summing it up out loud. Wrigley may claim their meeting wasn't escalated, but it looks like Sheila was ready for a fight. She was going to accuse him of misusing school funds to the board. She even had receipts to expose his splurges. Cale skimmed the documents. $4,000 for an executive's chair? And $900 for a coffee maker? We're reduced to buying all of our furniture and appliances for the precinct at Big Lots. Minka shook her head, muttering, and yet kids don't deserve a nice school play. The ground rules. On their way off the school premises, Minka and Cale had hoped to run into Gideon Hutchins, the board member, or his son Axel, but neither remained on the property. Before they could hunt them down or contact Sheila's next of kin, they ambled back to the park to meet up with the groundskeeper. They didn't have difficulty locating him. He stood by a city truck, wearing a duty uniform with short sleeves, revealing a tattoo on his forearm. It was a football with the letters XL under it. Minka guessed as a nod to a bowl game of sorts. Leaning against the cab, he tinkered with his phone. "Are you Zachary Phelps?" Cale asked the man. After Zachary nodded, Cale went on, "I'm Detective Cale Avery. This is my partner, Detective Minka Avery." "Avery, huh?" Zachary replied. "Are either of you related to Wes? I graduated with him." "I'm his wife and Cale's his brother," Minka explained. Cale kept the conversation on track. "A woman was found dead here this afternoon near your defunct tetherball post. We're estimating that it occurred between 3 and 4 o'clock. Were you present then?" Phelps shook his head. "I wish I would have been. I mowed the lawn, but had to quit before I finished because my tractor broke down. I was hauling it back to the shop when my boss called and told me you guys needed me here." "Sorry to interrupt your day, but we can use your insight on the crime scene," Minka told him, and she and Cale ushered him over to the area. Once there, Cale pointed at the camera. "Do you know who installed that? The city confirmed it's not one of theirs." Phelps shrugged. "No clue. I hadn't noticed it. Somebody could have brought it here for social media purposes and forgot it. You wouldn't believe the stuff people desert." "Well, considering it's powered on, it must not have been left too long ago," Minka said. "I can't envision what sort of video a person would make by a rundown playground equipment." Phelps smirked. "People post some stupid content." Well, she couldn't argue with that. She did, however, confront the one question she'd had ever since she approached the tetherball. Why was the ball left hanging, despite the mandate not to play with it? "Oh, we just didn't bother," Phelps waved a dismissive hand. "Nobody used it before the ruling came down, so we slapped the sign on merely as a formality. Keep the politicians happy." "A pocket of sorts was cut into the ball," Cale informed him. "Are you sure you didn't notice anybody loitering over here?" "Nah," Phelps claimed. "I'm not paying attention to that, of all things. Besides, people usually vandalize at night when nobody's around." Minka accessed the photo she downloaded off the school website. "Have you seen this woman before?" Phelps nodded. "Sure. She's the drama teacher. She comes out here often for her lunch breaks. As a matter of fact, she asked me before if she could have the tetherball pole for a prop." At first, the request surprised Minka, considering the old game's poor condition. In light of the budget cuts placed on her, however, Minka concluded that the director must have been desperate for anything she could use to suit her production. Plus, the post could probably serve as a stand for stage lights. "Can you get us a copy of surveillance footage from the lamppost cameras?" Cale asked Phelps. "I'm afraid that's above my pay grade, sir," Phelps replied. "I reckon you better give the city another call." "Figures," Cale muttered. "They're also probably in charge of those lawn markers over there, aren't they?" When Phelps confirmed Minka's guess, she continued, "Do you notice people taking them?" "Oh, yeah," Phelps replied, "especially kids and teens. I'm always calling my boss for more." "Did you notice anything out of the ordinary today?" Minka asked. "Well, now that you mentioned it," Phelps scratched his chin. "That trash can over there was tossed over when I first came here. The garbage was strewn all over the ground. It's happened in the past, and I just chalked it up to being juvenile shenanigans or vermin. With the lady dying in the same area, though, I wonder if something more is behind it this time." "I agree," Kay said. "Mind if we take a look?" "Well, have at it," Phillips stated, "but I already bagged it all back up and threw it in a dumpster." Minka and Cale combed the patch of grass around the trash bin, but they found nothing. Though they sorted through garbage for past cases, they opted to forego it for now. As Phelps admitted, Having an overturned trash can wasn't a very unusual occurrence, so they couldn't waste valuable time on what would probably be a pointless and disgusting venture. Nonetheless, they seized the camera as evidence, hoping their tech gurus could track down its owner and skim off what it captured. As they retraced their steps one last time to the school to collect Cale's car, Minka posed a possibility to her partner. I can't dismiss my drop-off point theory from my head. Sure, I doubt it was Sheila exchanging love letters, but what if the garbage can was used as a drop-off area too? Cale gave the possibility due consideration this time and nodded. Hopefully we can discern whatever it was without dumpster diving. Yeah, I'm pretty sure my doctor has me on a no dumpster diving restriction, so you'd be on your own. Minka winked at a grimacing Cale. It's for the baby's sake, you know. The Slugger and the Slacker. After wrapping up their business at the park, Cale contacted Gideon Hutchins, the father of Sheila's lackluster student. Hutchins related that he and his son Axel were at the baseball diamond for Axel's practice, fitting in line with Wrigley's summary of a kid more devoted to a sport than his education. Since the baseball field was on their way to the precinct, the detectives made a pit stop. When they encountered Gideon, he sat alone on the bleachers in the middle of a phone conversation. He stuck up his pointer finger to instruct them to wait. So Minka peered at the kids on the field and wondered which one might be the thorn in Sheila's side. The boys were all involved in different routines, with some fielding balls across the infield while others played catch in the outfield. A few players stood in line to get some batting practice at home plate, but a certain wannabe slugger hogged the activity. When he turned his back in their direction, Minka read Hutchins printed on the back of his t-shirt, confirming it to be Axel. At last, Gideon wound up his call and gave the detectives an amiable smile. Detectives Avery, I assume. I feel as though I already know you, ma'am. My daughter has your husband as a teacher a couple years ago. He's used you a lot as an example to the students, which is so inspiring to them. Minka's cheeks heated up, despite having heard the same remarks before among Wes's colleagues and pupils. I appreciate that, sir. Cale commenced the interview. We'd like to talk to you about Axel and his relationship with his drama teacher, Sheila Nevins. Rumor has it he struggled to meet her expectations. Gideon released a snigger. I understood her concerns, but since when can a disgruntled teacher call the cops on a kid for some missing assignments? Minka maintained a straight face as she told him, since I discovered her dead about an hour ago. Her comeback rendered Gideon speechless for a moment until he started to sputter, I apologize. I didn't know. It hasn't been made public yet, Cale stated. Has Mrs. Nevins spoken with you about her frustrations with Axel? She's emailed my wife a few times, but we've been too busy to schedule a formal conference, Gideon said. To be honest, we didn't see the reason in her dispute. Drama is an elective, after all. Axel doesn't have acting aspirations. He just wanted it for his college resume and the easy credit during the chaotic spring semester. Minka had to believe this family must have been one of the causes for Wes returning home grumpy sometimes. She didn't scold Gideon about school etiquette, but focused on the case. Did you run into her at all today on the groundbreaking? Gideon nodded. She actually approached me to set up a conference with the board about funding concerns. His statement reminded Minka of the receipts on Sheila's printer. She took a chance on Gideon's ethics, questioning, did it occur to you that this would coax her to strike a deal with you? She wanted more funding, and you wanted Axel's grade to improve. Convenient, isn't it? Gideon offered a sly smirk. Even if I had the pull to get her a bigger budget, which I don't, FYI, I know better than to bribe a nitpicker like her. Cale paused a moment, doubtlessly to keep the confrontational temperature low, before he asked, may we talk with Axel about his perspective? The father accommodated him and led him over to the fence that separated the spectators from the diamond. Gideon called Axel over, who had taken a respite from the batting cage, but was still the next in line to use it. When Gideon introduced him to Minka and Kale, the teen's posture tensed up upon learning their profession. Granted, the title intimidated most kids. Minka employed an approach similar to the way Dawson handled Reagan. Axel, we were wondering if you had drama class today. No, I don't have it on Tuesdays, Axel reported. Did you have any contact with Mrs. Nevins today? Kale questioned. Why would I? Axel countered. Maybe because she was threatening to sink your eligibility to play, Minka suggested. When he failed to respond, Minka tried another inquiry. Has she discussed that with you? Gideon put up a hand between them and the boy, a barrier of sorts. With all due respects, Detective, I'd prefer you be up front with my son rather than speaking to him in riddles. Fair enough, Kale acknowledged. Axel, we believe Mrs. Nevins was murdered this afternoon, and we'd like to know your thoughts on that. Of all the people who learned of the tragedy, Axel displayed the least amount of disturbance over it. He sighed, but it signaled apathy instead of sorrow. Nonetheless, he expressed, That's sad. A lot of kids liked her. Did you? Minka pressed. Well, I didn't know her too well. This was my only semester in her class, Axel said. And you hardly showed up, Minka thought. She sensed Gideon growing more protective, so she worded her follow-up carefully. Did you go anywhere besides school and practice? Well, I skipped my final study hall because I had to pick up my sister from the school for the deaf she attends, Axel informed them. Gideon grinned and chimed in. Yes, my wife was working late, so Axel chipped in like always. I'm sure you can appreciate having a supportive family, Detective. Minka nodded, suppressing her resentful groan over him using her deafness as a leverage to frame his son as a golden child. She debated what was worse, somebody stereotyping her as incapable of doing her job, or somebody stereotyping her as an obvious patsy. Gideon snapped her out of her indignant rumination, telling his son, If we're done here, I'll run to Target and get a new belt for you. You're a 26, right? Axel affirmed his size, drawing the detective's attention to his lack of an accessory. Kale casually asked, Did one of your teammates swipe yours or something? Nah, mine just broke when I was sliding into home plate yesterday, Axel replied. The partners exchanged a glance before departing the field. In the car, Minka realized she missed a call from Wes. She returned it and put him on speakerphone. His voice carried an apprehensive undertone as he announced, Minx, now I remember who used to say that phrase about snitches. All right, everyone, we've reached the deliberation.
Yay.
Before we get into it, I want to remind everyone that we remain ad-free. And in exchange for not making you listen to ads for things that you don't need, we do ask you to support our authors by checking out their backlist and picking up a title. This week is Karina Bartaw. Follow her on her blog and social posts, and check out her backlist of titles for the series for Detective Minka Avery.
Yay.
All right. Detective Avery is caught up in the drama of the death of Sheila Nevins, but she needs our help to find the killer. Here are the people she's come across so far in the investigation. Are you ready, Jack?
I am.
Okay. William Barkley, Wes's former lab partner and current middle school teacher.
Okay.
Detective. Superintendent Wrigley, who is working to balance a budget while building a new middle school.
Okie dokie.
Gideon Hutchins, the board member and a devoted father.
Or something.
Axel Hutchins, the high school ball player with a shot at being recruited.
Uh-huh.
And Zachary Phelps, the groundskeeper for the park behind the middle school.
Okie smoky.
Okay, you got all those characters straight?
I got all 7 of them.
it's only 5.
All 7.
This ought to be interesting. All right, so here are the facts that Minka and Kale have unearthed.
Okie pokey.
Detective? Why do I keep saying detective? Drama teacher.
The detective teacher.
The detective teacher, Sheila Nevins was found dead on the edge of the defunct tetherball court after a groundbreaking ceremony for the new middle school. She was strangled with something like a rope or a belt.
And you're telling me it wasn't the rope to the tetherball? If it wasn't the rope to the damn tetherball thing, I'm going to be livid.
It's not, because the deflated tetherball was still hanging, and it could not have still been hanging if the rope was missing.
So you're saying you've never been standing next to a tetherball thing and someone just grab it and wrap it around your neck and be like, ha ha ha.
No.
It's like, think about it. It hangs lower than your head. There'd be enough for you to wrap it around your head.
I don't know. I think I'm too short for that to happen.
That is true.
The deflated tetherball had a note inside saying, "Snitches never win." The note had a torn corner that matched a bit remaining on a lawn stake. Lawn stake. Not snake. Stake.
Okay.
Minka's husband remembered that a guy from his football team, number 60, used the phrase, "Snitches never win." He was kicked off the team for using drugs, specifically steroids. A small camera was found recording the tether pole. It was on, but not one of the ones owned by the city for security.
Okay.
So now here are the stories for our suspects. So William Barkley was frustrated with Sheila because she would not put on his play. He was counting the days until she retired. Barkley was late getting to the groundbreaking because of a book fair, which a student's testimony contradicted. So he went to the book fair, but he didn't get back just in the nick of time, like he said.
Okay.
Superintendent Wrigley had a showdown with Sheila, telling her the drama budget was being cut and she needed to raise money. Sheila connected information on Wrigley misusing funds and was planning to out him to the board. Wrigley spoke at the groundbreaking. Okay?
All right.
Remember the...
So he was at the groundbreaking.
Yeah, he was the one speaking.
Speaking during when she died.
Well, the timing is a little bit questionable whether she died immediately before the groundbreaking or immediately after the groundbreaking.
But it wasn't during.
Wasn't during. It seemed to be before, but I don't know. Based on the way it was written, Minka kept thinking that people being at the groundbreaking would provide an alibi, so the window's pretty tight there.
Okay, so people wanted to be there.
Yeah.
For an alibi. That's weird.
Why is that weird?
Because you could be anywhere for an alibi.
You have to be somewhere people see you for an alibi or a camera.
Yeah, but
sees
I mean,
you.
if we know that it happened clearly before or after, then the alibi was pointless.
Okay.
The alibi instead just says, well, one of these people had to have done it.
Okay, I see where your thinking's going.
So really, not that it's dumb, but that the alibi backfired.
Okay. Gideon Hutchin was upset with Sheila for putting his son Axel on the bench by failing him in drama class. Scouts were planning to look at his son, something very important to his college plans. Gideon was at the groundbreaking.
Okay.
Axel Hutchins took drama for an easy grade, and now he's in danger of being ineligible just when the scouts are coming. He was missing his uniform belt, which he claimed broke the day before. He was not at the groundbreaking, as he was picking his sister up from school.
Okay.
Zachary Phelps was mowing the park before the groundbreaking. He left when the belt broke on the lawnmower. He knew Sheila, who ate lunch at the park, and had asked him for the tether pole as a prop. So,
all right then.
Who should Minka shine the spotlight of justice on?
Okay, not Zachary, because no one snitched. There isn't unless there was a drop and Zachary did see the drop and he was threatening to snitch, then he'd be the snitch. So maybe it could be Zachary. I suppose they all could be snitches, but...
Well, what would William be a snitch about?
Well, if she wrote the letter... Well, I guess that confirms she didn't. Let's game it, people. Okay, so William wrote the letter. Snitches get stitches. Who was William again?
William was
the... I don't think it was him. What a dumb reason to kill someone. Like, look, if you're willing to kill for that, you're willing to kill for a freaking Klondike bar, okay? Like, No.
What would you do for a Klondike bar?
Murder the drama teacher. That seems pretty
now
extreme.
I want ice cream.
No, you don't. What Klondike bars were they mint?
No, I mean some, but not all.
I hated mint ice cream. Anyway, I don't think it was him. That's such a stupid reason to kill
Okay,
someone.
colored him in yellow, so not William.
Okay. Superintendent, he could very well have been behind this. However, as far as we know, he doesn't know that we don't know for a fact that he found out that Sheila was going to rat on him, right?
That is true. We know that she talked to Gideon Hutchins, the board member, to try to talk to him about it. It did not seem from what Wrigley told Avery and Cale that he knew that Sheila was building up evidence against his own spending habits.
Okay. I'm going to not say Axel and Gideon because it's just stupid. Like, okay, you really want your kid to get into... Like, killing her doesn't fix it. You need her to improve the grade.
Yeah.
So, if anything, you wouldn't want to kill her. You might threaten her. You wouldn't kill her. So, I don't think either of them would have done it because it doesn't... Maybe it's just something that wasn't thought about, when it was written. But, like, I don't know. If I needed a better grade in the class, I wouldn't kill my teacher. I'm not going to get a better grade. There's no one else to give me a better grade. I'm stuck with what I have, you see?
Yeah.
Granted, that's probably not how this story was written. Karina probably wasn't going, but don't you think you need... No, that wasn't the point of the story. But from that logic, I feel like I have a good enough reason to write them off because I just don't think it's them anyway.
So that leaves you with Superintendent Wrigley and groundskeeper Zachary Phelps.
Now we have to decide what kind of story this is. Is it this is the kind of story that says, screw you, I'm going to make it someone that you can't guess? It would be Zachary because he's got very little on there. However, we do see that he is at the grounds regularly.
Mm-hmm.
He would, what was... There was a hint about the stakes, the garden stakes. There's a piece of something underneath it.
On one of the garden stakes, there was the corner of a piece of paper that turned out to match the corner that was torn off of the note that Minka found that said "Snitchers never win." So at some point, that note was on the ground stake. Somebody ripped it off and shoved it in the tether ball.
What's a ground stake again?
It's
just a stake in the ground,
It's
right?
just a stake in the ground that marks a boundary.
Why would it be there?
I don't have an answer for that.
You can't legally. All right, I gotta pick somebody, and none of them seem too obvious to me. Except for the three, I don't think it is because I think they don't have a great enough reason to do it. Granted, people will kill for anything.
Especially in fiction.
Yeah.
Although I think people kill for more random things in real life. It turns out that
100%.
fiction has a higher bar.
Because you need logic to work. You don't need logic in real life. You can just do it.
Yeah. Okay. So,
I
Phelps
think I gotta
or
go
Wrigley?
I think I have to go with Phelps, although Wrigley is seeming like a better option.
So which one am I coloring green?
Phelps. Michael Phelps.
I knew you were going to get there eventually. Okay, so that is green, and Wrigley is coloring him yellow.
Michael Phelps's face is on the side of a spa sales place, like a hot tub sales shop. I don't know, by where we live.
Yeah,
So,
he endorses. I don't even know what the.
I don't know what it is either.
It's not really a spa. It's one of those
It's called
in-place
spa.
swimming pools.
Yeah.
Where,
The name of the company has the word spa in it, I think.
which shows how good we pay attention.
Yeah,
So we remember.
I just read Michael Phelps one day when I was like 19 after, looking at it for a solid 13 years or something. I was like, he was wearing like his goggles. You don't realize it's Michael Phelps. It's another white guy swimming. Like, All right, let's keep going.
All right. As a reminder to mystery readers, check out our print and ebooks. This season's book is being released in 2 parts. Part 1, Opening Gambit, released in March, that has the first 12 stories of this season. Part 2, Final Move, will release in September. That will include this story and stories 13 through 25. Buy one for you and a mystery lover you love. The dimes and quarters from the sales do keep the podcast up and running, keep Jack in up-to-date software licenses, and the pinwheel sandwiches he loves.
I literally ate that 1 hour ago. Did you write that in within the last hour?
I did.
Okay.
I have to keep these things like, this is live. I can't write
fresh.
something of what you ate last week.
It's like it's written into the script of like, how long have you predicted that I would eat that sandwich?
Did you notice last time we recorded, I had something in there like you had just done like 10 minutes before we sat down to record.
I didn't say anything
You
about it.
think I don't pay attention to what you do.
You write it into stories.
I use the magic power of moms being able to see out of the back of their heads.
It's weird.
Thieves never win. Back at the station, Minka and Kale awaited word from Jeremy, the IT guy, to learn if he could salvage anything from the camera overlooking the tetherball pole. Meanwhile, they contacted Sheila's mother, who lived in Palm Beach, to convey the grim news. And after the sad exchange, they mustered their waning energy to begin their reports on the ongoing investigation. Across their shared desk, Kale told Minka, "I can't believe I didn't recall Phelps saying to the football team when he was outed for taking steroids." "It's suspicious, all right," Minka agreed. "I even saw the football tattoo on his arm. It featured the letters LX, which I took to be commemorating a bowl game like the Super Bowl." "No, this year was 58. LVIII. LX is 60, just like Wes remembered he wore," Kale stated. "But connecting him to the statement doesn't tie him to the homicide itself. We need conclusive proof." They continued with their paperwork. On a whim, Minka ran a search on the park through the police database, which resulted in a match with the recent anonymous tip. "I found a lead," she proclaimed. "Just last week, a tipster reported finding prescription drugs concealed in the tetherball. The claim was forwarded to the narcotics department, who followed up but didn't uncover anything solid enough to pursue it." "Whoever was peddling drugs probably heard about the report and placed the camera there to identify the source," Kale speculated. "Phelps is looking more and more guilty, as he no doubt had to be clued in about the allegation and would be more than capable of managing that camera." Minka added on to the scenario. "He could have been glued to the camera feed, waiting for the opportunity to pounce on the, quote, snitch. Poor Sheila, she may not have even been the tipster." Kale rose from his seat. "I think I'll ask Captain Channing if he can help persuade the city for access to the other surveillance. I'm sure the DA would give us a warrant to speed things along, if needed." Minka concurred, and once he left, she researched Phelps. The man had a colorful history with the law, a couple of battery offenses and DUIs. Oddly enough, however, the one innocent record from his past gave her the breakthrough she sought. On his marriage license, his bride signed her name, Claudia Hinsdale, M.D. The instant Kale returned to his desk, Minka related, "It's not very difficult figuring out how Phelps could get his hand on prescription meds. His wife's a pain management doctor." "That tracks," he replied, "but it's all still circumstantial." Less than a minute had elapsed when Jeremy finally emerged from his IT office with his findings. "Well, guys, I wasn't able to extract anything I captured since its data goes straight to the cloud. After some tinkering, though, I located the IP address of the place where the owner is set up." Jeremy passed them a piece of paper that had a street address, and Minka typed it into her computer. The result gave them what they wanted, being registered to Zachary Phelps. As much as it exhilarated them to link something to Phelps, it still didn't offer enough to label him the killer. Kale sighed. It's no smoking gun, but it's a start. They hunted down the groundskeeper's base and set off for the depot. When they entered Phelps' small office, he was putting his supplies away for the night. On his desk, Minka spotted a box of lawn flags like the one under Sheila's body. "If you reconsider the dumpster diving detectives, the one you need isn't here," Phelps told them. The remark made Mika wonder if there was ever the mess he mentioned or if it was a ruse to sidetrack them. "Oh, no thanks, sir," Cale replied. "We're more interested in this." When Cale held up the camera, Phelps maintained his ignorant stance. "Like I said, I don't know anything about that." "Really?" Cale retorted. "Because it recorded your home IP address in its log." "I don't have to talk to you about my personal property," Phelps said. During the men's exchange, Mika noticed a lawnmower hosted up on a lift and remembered Phelps' claim about having mechanical issues. A theory formed and she scanned the area. His hat hung on a peg beside the door, and a lawnmower belt hung behind it. "Your personal property may be none of our business, but I'm sure that belt on the wall belongs to the city." She motioned toward it. "If it has even a smidgen of our victim's DNA on it, you better believe they'll want to know why." To her surprise, Phelps conceded, tears in her eyes. "Claudia will lose her license to practice because of what I coerced her to do. It'll ruin our lives. That snitch had to pay." That, quote, snitch might have been anybody, given it was an anonymous tip, Cale informed him as he slapped handcuffs on his wrist. "It had to be her," Phelps protested. "She was the only one who paid attention to that stupid pole." After Cale shut the door, he told Minka, "Well, you could head home once we get back to the precinct. I'll handle the booking." "I appreciate it, but I'm not in a rush," Minka said. "All that awaits me is admitting to Wes that he was right, not only about it being Phelps, but about it not being William. Humble pie isn't among my pregnancy cravings." The end.
Yeah, I was mad at her for writing that, dude. I was like, "Oh my god, you really think this guy did it over over that?"
Over Wrigley? Yeah, but somehow you again gamed it and pull away yet another win.
Well, look, the other thing, it isn't great, but this happens an annoying amount in some of these mysteries. You notice everybody seems so nice and white collar, except for the guy who did it, who's the groundskeeper. Look, it's really annoying to say. It happens a lot in some of these but at the same time, a lot of stories use that to make you think that the blue collar guy did it, but no, of course, it was a white collar crime kind of thing.
Well, and there are mysteries where I know there's a series that Dad and I like to watch, Midsummer Murders, and the killer always seems to be that person who's in it, but not in it enough to be a main character. And
Mm-hmm.
so, once you figure out their style of writing, you can game it and be like, okay, who haven't we heard
It's like after the third interview with the same person, it's not them.
of?
Sorry, it's just not. If there was one passing interview where it was like, "Yeah, I was out at the shipping yard last Tuesday. Go talk to Jimmy John." Yeah, it was him. It was not Jimmy John, but the guy who told you to go to Jimmy John.
Yeah, this one was interesting, and I did follow up with Karina just to see, like, well, was Sheila the snitch? And, she said, she goes, "Well, I don't know. The tip was anonymous." So even in the author's mind, it was not determined if Sheila was the snitch or if this was sort of a bystander who got caught up in something that she had no clue was there.
Well, I'm also trying to think if there was something in the story that made it that 100% it had to be Phelps, or else a fact would have been like incorrect kind of thing.
Um, I mean the thing is that he was out there with the lawnmower and quote the lawnmower broke, so he had the lawnmower belt. So he was the only one who was placed at the park prior to the event.
Yeah, I suppose anyone still could have gone there.
Anyone could have gone there, but of all the characters we talked to, the only one who admitted to being actually at the scene, although he said he wasn't there during the event, which was also true,
Mm-hmm.
he was the one who admitted to going there.
Yeah. The one other thing that got the second that I said it was Phelps, I like started playing and then I went, crap, there's no way it could have been him because if it had been him, he wouldn't have let the detectives take the camera, nor would he have probably left it there after killing the person, unless he just forgot about it, which it looks like he just forgot about it.
It looks like he forgot about it. There was definitely a mistake. And I think he couldn't admit to it being his, right? So he had to just play it off.
He kind of did admit. He kind of just went, well, it's something about my property. You can't, whatever.
Well, that was once they cornered him on it when they were interviewing him out at the grounds. He's like, I don't know. It's probably something for social media. People leave stuff here all the time.
Yeah.
I think he was trying to distract their attention away from it. And had they bought it, I'm sure he would have swiped it. And
you're right. Yeah. So it was
want,
not an easy one.
No. You want to learn a little bit about tetherball?
Sure.
So this is from my favorite source, Wikipedia, and the website Backyard Sidekick. They trace tetherball back to the late 1800s and early 1900s, where it was found on playgrounds. Variations have the game played with hands or with rackets while having the same rules. If you haven't played it, which I haven't, it is actually a two-player game. So players stand on opposite sides of the pole. One player hits it clockwise, the other hits it back, hitting it counterclockwise. The game ends when one player wraps the line around the pole. So basically, it's almost like a tethered version of tennis where you're hitting it back and forth. And you need to get it past your opponent so that it would wrap around the pole, getting shorter and shorter. There's a surprising number of rules and variations for what seems like to be a simple game. So there's 2 links in the show notes. Check them out. There's definitely more to tetherball than I ever thought. Before we check out about Karina Barta, we are going to find out how long a giraffe femur is.
It's not that long.
Did you look it up?
I did look it up.
How did you look it up and play the piano at the same time? That is ridiculous.
A lot of pedaling was used. So a giraffe femur is like 4 feet tall or something. Not that big. But the biggest like bone in existence is like the Argentinosaurus, and it's 6 feet tall. So it's still not tall enough to be a tetherball pole.
So we have put an end to that mystery.
Unfortunately.
Bones cannot be used as tetherball poles.
However, full skeletons can be.
Full skeletons
full
can be.
Full giraffe skeletons.
Yes, except that then the bones wouldn't be connected because the cartilage between them would have disintegrated.
Nail them. Just nail them.
So let's learn about Karina. Karina grew up and still lives in northern Ohio. Though born with cerebral palsy, she has never allowed her disability to define her. Rather, she's used her experiences to breathe life into characters who have physical limitations, but like her, are determined to not let them stand in the way of the life they want. Her works include Husband in Hiding, Brother of Interest, Accidental Allies, Forgetting My Way Back to You, and Wrong Line, Right Connections. She may only type with one hand, but she writes with her whole heart. Check her out at Karina Bartow, that's BARTOW.com. Like I said, she's very active on social media, and she has a really excellent blog. So go ahead and follow her and check out her backlist. That wraps up Mysteries to Die For, and I got through a whole episode in allergy season without coughing once. Yay me. Support our show by subscribing, telling a mystery lover about us, and giving a 5-star review. Check out our episode at tgwolff.com/podcast for links to this season's authors. Mysteries to Die For is hosted by TG Wolff and Jack Wolff. Tethered to Drama was written by Karina Bartow. Music and production are by Jack Wolff. Episode art is by TG Wolff. Join us next week for a toe tag, which is an excerpt from a fresh release in the mystery, crime, or thriller genre, and then come back in 2 weeks for our next original story. It is going to be a cool double episode. The game Army is the featured game, and it is Never Saw That Coming by one of our favorites, Ken Harris. All right, Jack, take us out.